Good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started here. If you wouldn't mind in the chat, go ahead and share your name. Share your name, the agency that you work for, and what you are hoping to learn today. My name is Megan Nice. I am the network lead with Colorado Afterschool Partnership. And Colorado Afterschool Partnership is one of 50 statewide networks funded by the C.S. Mott Foundation. Through this network, CAP has access to valuable resources and research used by extended learning programs across the U.S. that we then share with the after-school and summer field. CAP creates partnerships that support the development and sustainability of after-school and summer programs across Colorado. We believe in the power of after-school and summer learning, and CAP is here to support your work. And today, we are pleased to learn along with you about the AmeriCorps program through Serve Colorado. We've got Danny Fisher here and Brian Wegner. Thank you for joining us today, and I'm going to turn it over to them to present their materials. So I'll stop my share, and Brian, you can take over.
Great, thanks so much. So we'll start with introductions. My name is Brian Wegner. I'm an assistant program director with the AmeriCorps National Civilian Community Corps. We like to abbreviate it to NCCC because that's a mouthful. So that's just a little bit about me. I work in the Southwest region, which I'll explain more about in just a second, and I'll hand it over to Danny.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Danny Fisher. I lead outreach and training for Serve Colorado, which is one of the other branches, if you will, of AmeriCorps, and we'll explain the branches in just a second. So I travel the state often and with Brian and to present to different groups to help people understand AmeriCorps, listen to community needs, and help identify connections that might be possible. And we will be joined later by Melinda McPherson, who is a program director for one of our programs through CSU Extension. Okay, next slide. All right. Some of you may know this, but we don't like to assume that people really understand AmeriCorps. It's complex, and some people have heard of or worked with one of the three pieces to it. So AmeriCorps has three streams of national service, and it is throughout the country and also in Puerto Rico, Guam, DC. And so we're this big network, and we look at ourselves as being a cost-effective solution to a lot of issues throughout the country, and we support locally identified needs and local solutions. That's a really big part of how we function. It is a way to strengthen nonprofits, so we can work with tribal governments, we can work with tribal nonprofits, faith-based organizations, state entities, municipal governments, school districts, all kinds of groups. We just can't work directly with for-profit entities, essentially. So AmeriCorps is also now the name of the federal agency that oversees what we do. And it used to be called the Corporation for National and Community Service. So if you have ever seen that, often abbreviated to CNCS, it is now called AmeriCorps. It gets a bit confusing. So if I'm referring to the agency, I'll say AmeriCorps, the agency, to refer to the federal entity that oversees what we do. I work for the state, so I'm in the Lieutenant Governor's office on a team called Serve Colorado. So we're the Governor's Commission on Community Service. So my team oversees the grants within one portion of this, and then Brian is a Fed with NCCC, like you said. We don't have a VISTA rep with us, so you'll see on the screen there's state, national, NCCC, and VISTA. So VISTA is the oldest piece of AmeriCorps. It's Volunteers in Service to America, but it's really called VISTA. You probably see that most often. So they are also run by the federal AmeriCorps agency, and they do indirect service components. And we are happy to connect you with them if you think that kind of back of house indirect capacity building is the primary need for your group. Our members can do some of that, but a very small portion. But if that's your primary need, then let us know. We can connect you with them. Also, every VISTA program has to have a connection to poverty alleviation. That's kind of why it was started initially in the 60s, and it has continued today as AmeriCorps has grown into this huge group of programs. Okay, next slide, please. So there are 6 focus areas, and I'm sharing this because I know we're meeting with educational folks today, but we like to capture other overlapping areas of service. So disaster services, we don't have any programs in our portfolio with Serve Colorado right now in disaster services. Economic opportunity, of course, education, environmental stewardship, healthy futures, and veterans and military families. The vets and mil families is the other area where we don't have any programs right now, so we're doing increased outreach for those areas. But with education, if there is an overlap for healthy futures, let's say if it's something tied into health that you would want support with, we would want to capture that, which is why I'm also mentioning that. And with the partners, I noted these at the beginning of the presentation. Federally recognized tribes need to apply directly to the federal entity, but we can support outreach for those groups. And if any of you works with a nonprofit that is focused on tribal and indigenous peoples, we can work with them though, okay? Anything that you want to add to Brian, please do. Otherwise, next slide. All right, this is where I'm going to break down my team, Serve Colorado, in more detail. So I have the national piece in parentheses. That is because my entity only covers the state of Colorado, right? We only have that jurisdiction. The national piece to this is that if there is a program that needs to operate in more than one state at a time, then you can do that under this direct service component, but it would be run by the feds. So if any of you works with a nonprofit that would want to do some activities with AmeriCorps, let's say in Colorado and Utah at the same time, then you would apply for whatever we talk about. We would have you apply directly to the federal government, okay? Utah has its own commission in this example, so if there were separate activities, you could apply to us and the Utah Commission, if that makes sense, okay? So with us, AmeriCorps members serve with students, families, communities. They do things in the educational space, sometimes during school, before school, after school, on weekends. They do all different kinds of things based on the needs that you all have identified and presented to us, okay? As I mentioned a bit ago, only a small amount of time can be spent on indirect pieces of a need. What we're here for is really to interact with the people you want to support. So if that is students, we want members serving with you, but serving those students, kind of like you see in this picture right here, okay? It could also be serving with families. We have one program that supports early age educational components with parents of young kids, okay? So it can be many different people in there, but it's direct service. You would apply directly through us, and all decisions are made at the state level. And later on, after we go through Brian's piece and talk through an example, we'll get into some of the details about how you could proceed if you were interested in working with us. One thing that is very different between NCCC and AmeriCorps State is that our members can serve full-time, part-time. There are many different levels. Members are going to track service hours. Okay? A full-time member is tracking 1,700 service hours during their agreed-upon term of service. So that could take 10 to 12 months, depends on how much time they put in each week. Okay? But you could have half-time, you could have three-quarters time. And we lay that out very clearly for you through our materials so that you know what the minimum requirements are and it really fits with your needs. Minimal time goes down to 300 hours, so it could be something over a summer. If you do 3/4 time, let's say, you could have a program that is focused on the school year. All different kinds of things in here that we can work through with you, okay? But there is that flexibility. Vista, though they're not here, is 1 year. They serve a year, and that's it. There are some summer associate opportunities with them, but the primary function of their service is to be 1 full year. Okay? Any questions about this piece? Okay. And I welcome any questions along the way in chat as well. Okay, next slide. And I'll hand it over to Brian, and then we'll get into some examples.
Thanks so much, Danny. So as Danny mentioned, I work for the federal agency, which is AmeriCorps, and I work for a division of the agency called AmeriCorps NCCC, which again is the National Civilian Community Corps. We're similar to AmeriCorps State and National in that we are going to be providing that sort of direct service that Danny talked about. If you need tutors, if you need people running after school programs, our members are going to be the ones that are doing that direct service, but they operate in a little bit different way. So we are a full-time residential team-based program, specifically having members that are young adults. So they're 18 to about 24 or 25. And they serve for 10 months on various projects. So one project round is going to be about 3 to 12 weeks, and they're going to serve on that project round, and then they're going to move on to another project. So your organization would only get them for that 3 to 12 weeks. You could apply for another team directly after that, but it would be a new group of people. So you could have continued service, but the people would change. We partner with local and national organizations. So the same group that Danny listed before is applicable to our division of the agency. And you would apply directly through our region's campus. So instead of applying to serve Colorado and then having members for a full-time term or a part-time term and managing those members, you would apply through our region and we would grant you those members, but we would take care of the management of those members. So those are some of the big differences. And I will turn it back over to Danny.
Okay, so there's a lot of detail that we could add to this. It gets a bit tricky doing that when people, depending on what your awareness of AmeriCorps is. So please ask any questions that you might have that we can dive down into some of what we've presented. We're trying to keep it high level so it's not overwhelming, as it can be sometimes with AmeriCorps. So with AmeriCorps State, we have an example. We want to share a story for you. We fund programs, an idea. So you come to us with an idea for an intervention to address a local need, and we fund your idea essentially. And so you'd have a program. Now, Melinda in a moment is going to talk about her program. I want to add something beforehand though, and that is that there are many groups in Colorado that don't need so many members. They don't need a big program, capacity, or financial support to run this, even with getting the funds from us. And so they participate in an intermediary. So we have some programs that apply to us as an intermediary, and then they work with smaller groups to send 1 or 2 members, let's say, to them. So there are many different ways to participate in what we do. And with that, though, I'm going to hand it over to Melinda to talk about the CSU program.
Morning, everybody. Thanks so much for being here today to hear a little bit more about AmeriCorps. It's something that I just think that I wish that everyone knew a little bit more about. So this is great. So I work at Colorado State University Extension. As many of you know, we have an extension office in most of the counties in Colorado. It's something like 60 of the 64 counties. So we really have a presence across the whole state. I work at the state office, which is on campus in Fort Collins, and I'm the program manager for our 4-H STEM AmeriCorps program. We're currently in the 6th year of the program, and we provide members to do out-of-school time STEM programming in the 4-H method, which I'm not sure if everyone's familiar about that, but it's all about positive youth development, providing a caring adult, hands-on learning. So kind of in that engaged, hands-on sort of way, we do this STEM programming. And our target is really underserved youth. So we target schools that are 50% or higher free and reduced lunch, but we also serve students who are in community centers or at libraries or at extension offices, basically wherever we can find the youth. So we currently have members in, I think it's 12 or 13 counties around the state. And in some cases, it's one member in a county. In some cases, it's 3 or 4. So it just depends a little bit on the county. So Danny asked me to talk just a little bit about kind of why we got into this program and this partnership with Serve Colorado, and share a little bit about kind of how things are going with our program, especially in the pandemic and that sort of thing. So as far as why we wanted to partner with Serve Colorado, AmeriCorps is just a wonderful program to provide human capital to address a pressing community need. And it's a fairly inexpensive way to add a person. So our members are part-time members, so they serve 900 hours across about 11 months. So that's about 20 hours a week, which is perfect for that out-of-school time fit. And we're really able to provide members to counties at a really low cost. You know, if you think about hiring even a part-time state employee or county employee, you're thinking, you know, $30,000 or $40,000, where an AmeriCorps member is really a fraction of that. We also are just really interested in supporting STEM work. I know many folks on the call today are teachers, and you're probably aware of some of the science scores in Colorado, and people talk about the Colorado paradox, where we're not growing students and youth to fill these high-tech positions, and so we're really hoping to help with that. We've really had to transition, so in a typical year without the pandemic, our members would be physically in a room with a group of youth, you know, after school ended, or on the weekends, or some even before school or on spring break. And now we're doing a lot of virtual engagement. So things like grab and go STEM kits that youth can follow directions and, you know, learn kind of on their own independently. We've got members doing live videos or recorded videos to demonstrate some STEM concepts. We've even got, you know, blogs and, you know, STEM challenges through blogs and that sort of a thing. So we've really sort of pivoted to a more virtual engagement. But things are going really pretty well. The members are really engaged and doing great service in their communities. So, I'll pause and just ask anything else, or Danny, anything else you were hoping I would talk about?
Sure. So I am adding the link right now to our website so you can read a little bit more about Melinda's program and also the others. And I'm happy to connect you all with representatives from the other programs if you would like, if there's something that really speaks to you. We also list how much funding every group gets and how much they add to it in match, which is a component of this. One thing that I wanted to capture that Melinda said was the human capital piece. So we talk about AmeriCorps as people power. Think about what are your needs that people could help fill some kind of gap. This isn't funding, it's not a grant that you would apply to just to get funding to, I I guess, hire just a consultant or do whatever you want with it. It's about members bringing people in to support your cause. Okay, so Melinda also talked about the 900 hours piece and what made sense for their needs in the out of school time, right? So there are those different levels. And if Melinda's group wanted to change that, they could change that and apply for 3/4 time or full-time members. So there's also that flexibility. And Melinda, I'm thankful you also mentioned 6 years. So I'll get into some of these details in a bit, but our grant cycles are on 3-year rotations. Right now, we are working to support some special programs that might be 1 or 2 years. A lot of this is based on the COVID-19 pandemic and needs that have arisen because of that. Our executive director, John Kelly, is working with a lot of different groups around the state to identify needs and see how we can support in innovative ways. With that said, the traditional pathway that Melinda's group has gone through is in a 3-year cycle. Okay, Melinda, I'm curious, with the groups that you work with and where you send members, do they commit to like 1 year? How does that work?
Right. So our counties just approach us year to year. So we have a handful of counties who have been with us all 6 years, and every year they have a member or 3 members or just whatever their needs are. And then we have counties that kind of cycle in and cycle out based on needs.
Okay. And so one thing kind of tied to that I'd want to point out is if some of you are teachers, that maybe your school wouldn't apply for a grant, but your school district could. Like, that is one way to build in a structure similar to Melinda's program, is that we've had school districts have members before and then, or have a program and then members go to different sites. Maybe your school needs 1 or 2. That's fine. You would work in an intermediary structure kind of. Or if there was a big nonprofit that wanted to work with local schools, then that's possible. And we can help you through that. It's not all on you, let's say, as an individual educator to sort all of that out. There is a group, though, that would hold a grant, and then you would work with them, if that makes sense.
And Danny, could I
go
just
ahead.
add, sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
if what I mentioned sounds like it might be great for your school, if you're thinking some STEM support sounds like a great thing, please reach out to your local county office. I know we have a couple of extension educators on the call with us today. And I know that, we'd be more than willing to talk about how we could add in a county or add in, a school to our existing program.
And also on our website, if you look at that page, it should have the program, kind of the page with that organization for the program and a primary contact. And like I said earlier, though, I'm happy to facilitate an introduction if you prefer that. It's always great to have people like Melinda join us on these calls to talk about their experience, what it's really like, and answer questions from that kind of program leadership and grantee perspective. And then I can always answer questions about the administrative side to it. Any questions right now? Okay, we can go on, Brian.
All right. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the work that AmeriCorps NCCC has done in education. I'm going to start by giving a huge caveat here and remind you all that we are a residential team-based program. So what that means is that we have members serving in teams of around 8 to 12 members, and they're traveling from state to state to do their service. As you can imagine, this program model is not super conducive to a global health pandemic. That being said, the needs in our communities don't stop, and we still have a taxpayer-funded mandate to continue to serve communities. So we are trying our best to still accomplish our mission, but there are some restrictions and COVID guidelines that we are finding ourselves operating under. And so everything I'm about to say is sort of the ideal pre and post-COVID type of service that we would offer. In a COVID world, we would probably try to find solutions that are virtual, that are socially distant. And it's not to say that we can't do some of the service that I'm about to talk about, but we would just need to take a closer look at it. One, to protect your students, but also to protect our members. So end of caveat. Since 2014, our region specifically has accomplished the following outcomes, which you can see. We work in tutoring, in summer programs, in environmental workshops, and out-of-school programs, just to name a few. And whereas Danny kind of mentioned that their stream of service funds programs, we more fund, and I shouldn't even say fund because our grants are not really dealing with money at all. They're just dealing with the people. We supply projects. So they're shorter term, high impact service, which is why you get some of the outputs you see here. Oops. So these are just some photos of like the many things that our members can do related to education. They can help with, backpack distribution. They can help, sort of renovate school grounds or school garden grounds. They can work on sort of, it looks like the top left is sort of out of school educational programming. So, they can work on a variety of projects. We've got some videos here of different types of projects that our members might serve on. So I encourage you after this is done to go and check these out. And as you can see, we can operate with multiple different organizations. So we can work with nonprofits, like big national nonprofits like the Boys and Girls Club, or we can work with smaller local nonprofits like Appleseed Collective, which is down in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. So as I mentioned before, we're really about that direct service, that high impact, sort of short-term high impact service. So a lot of our projects will involve, after school programming, enrichment programs, things like that. So now we're going to kind of turn to a discussion so that we can hear more about your needs, how we can tailor this presentation to what you all need from us. So I will open this up with the first question, and Danny and I will kind of both take turns answering as the questions see fit. So we would love to hear from you all. Which programs make sense for your community?
And one thing I'll add to this is that there are some groups that work with more than one part of AmeriCorps at once, or it could be a phased approach. Sometimes you could have NCCC come in with a team for a set amount of time, these projects, set up something. Let's say they're building a playground, and then you need long-term support in some way for a school year or two or something, and then you could transition to working with my team and have long-term service in. And so we can complement each other in that way. And we have 2 programs in our portfolio right now that have also worked through an intermediary to get one VISTA member for that back of house capacity support. So you can do that as well. You don't have to pick one or the other necessarily. And I feel like these 2 questions are really connected. Sometimes it's easier for people like yourselves to say, we see ourselves with NCCC. That's it. That's fine. Sometimes it's a little easier to go with the second question and say, here's our need, or here's an idea that we have. What do you all think? And we can help you through that as well. So anybody have anything they'd like to share for this, or any questions that could help us get there with you.
And if you're chiming in, please feel free to introduce yourself and what organization you're with.
Well, I will start and say that what I am hoping for is that, many of the people on this call are working in the after school and summer field, and that AmeriCorps could help build their capacity. And so it might be one or two. What I'm wondering is, could like the primary organization apply for the grant and then have some members going out to different sites?
Yeah, absolutely. And as long as a member has someone who can supervise them at that site, then they're good to go. So Melinda, let's say with her program, Melinda does not daily supervise every member in her program. And so we also work with them on the different sites. I can offer training for the site staff if they're new to AmeriCorps. So there's also that support there. So they could go to different locations, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'll say, kind of tied to this, we are also working with the Colorado Department of Education to see how we can kind of join forces and funds to address some of the things that have come up and the issue of loss of learning, and really ramping up some things for this summer. I don't know what that might look like just yet, but there's a lot of support coming from us soon. And we have new tutoring courses and everything else. And one thing I like about the last set of photos that Brian shared when it said members are fun, I think it can be difficult sometimes if you've never worked with AmeriCorps, what it would really be like and what they might really do. And one thing that I think these photos show is there's also this element of human connection, that they are like that human kind of, it is capacity building in a way, but bringing in more people to help carry the load and all of that, and bring in this energy that the members have and are dedicating for a specific amount of time to come in and support you and support students you work with. So they're not there to supplant anyone. There's actually rules against this. So we cannot support any program where members are kind of taking the place of others. It isn't a way to save costs by saying, I'm just looking at someone, Robin, I see Robin on here. So Robin, if your entity was going to work with AmeriCorps, they couldn't come to you and say, Robin, you're out, we're using AmeriCorps. It can't be used that way. It's always to complement what is already going on. So in that sense, it's always building capacity. It's just that I will also say capacity building with us has some official terms and things that come along with that. So there is direct service that is also capacity building. So that could be kind of tricky, but it is ramping up, and it could be for a short amount of time. Okay, so you might not need it beyond this summer, or beyond the upcoming school year, and that could be fine as well.
So a follow-up question for you. Let's say an organization is thinking about applying. Is there a certain time period where you do like request for proposal or request for grant applications?
Yeah.
And then also, what are the reporting requirements once a grant is provided? Like, what kind of reporting is required and the administrative need for it, I guess?
Sure. Brian, if you want to go to the next slide, I can show some of that. So one thing to keep in mind is that if you come at it from this perspective that we've kind of leaned into about having just maybe 1, 2, 3 members, and you're getting those members from a bigger group, then the bulk of reporting and compliance and oversight is with the group that holds the grant. Okay, they're responsible. So Melinda has a lot of responsibility over the whole grant, over member experience, over what they're doing, checking in with site supervisors. And so she is our primary contact, and we have program officers. So she would work with one program officer and to get that support. So they're for support and compliance. And I have that down there at the bottom. Compliance is first and foremost. We have to make sure, because this is federal money that is coming in, that we follow all requirements that come along with that. And then beyond that, it is support. We want to make sure it's working well and that the program is having a positive impact on the organization and the community. So if you are at one site getting a member, you'll have some reporting requirements up to the group that holds the grant, and they'll check in to make sure you know what are allowable and unallowable activities for AmeriCorps members as well. But the fiscal component, the program compliance, is on the entity that holds the grant. Okay? So in Melinda's case, CSU Extension. Okay?
And I'll add that.
Yeah.
I was just going to add that it's a bit different for NCCC. Is there more that you'd like to say on that?
Why don't you go ahead, Brian, with that piece, then we can come back.
Sure. So I don't have a slide on this, but it's a bit different for AmeriCorps NCCC. So as I mentioned before, you sort of apply directly to the federal agency for our division. And when you get granted a team, that team is going to come with a team leader. That team leader is going to take care of member hours, member experience to some degree, member supervision. You would still work with that team and the team leader to have weekly meetings, check-ins, making sure that the program is going like you want it to go, making adjustments if need be. But largely with AmeriCorps NCCC, that team leader is going to handle a lot of the administrative burden for the team. I can answer more questions about that specifically, but that's sort of a brief overview.
So with this piece, if you are getting one or two members to your site, please keep in mind that you would be supervising someone because they have to have that supervision. You can't just have a member come in and completely run something and not have someone knowing what's going on at that site. However, the burden, the lift is not that big. Okay, if you have 2 members, then it'll be a little more, 3 members, a little more. But really it's on kind of at Melinda's level in all of the structure where that responsibility is. And then they have fiscal staff. But then throughout this time, there is support for that. So I lead the training portfolio, so I do stuff with members. I do stuff with the program staff. So Melinda has some requirements for training with us every year. And then I will offer ad hoc trainings for site staff based on needs. And an example for that is I teach conflict resolution on this side. So I offer a lot of workshops on conflict resolution specific to the needs of the program, and particularly for members and site supervisors. And looking at like a time of crisis with the pandemic and other things going on, just to make sure everyone is able to talk to each other and sort out some things well. If you've never worked with AmeriCorps, it could be tricky. Making sure you know what members can and cannot do, how to communicate with them, all of those things. So there's support for you along the way. And also, not that this is a huge thing, but if you are part of a nonprofit that might want your own program, but you're not sure, like you don't have all of the details laid out yet, we offer 1-year planning grants. So you don't have a member, you still have a program officer, you still work with me on training, and over a year or close to it, you build out that program. You get funding from us to maybe work with a consultant, work with us, and you flesh out an AmeriCorps program, okay? And that's what we usually offer in winter, spring. So we might have those funds available, and that would be launched, that request for applications would be launched in February. Okay. So 3 years are the operational. So Melinda's on this 3-year cycle. And then we also have a fiscal officer here who provides other support and might do some audits from time to time, but to make sure that funds are going in the right places.
I'm
Does
going
that kind
to
of get at it, Megan?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I was just going to move on to sort of our RFA and how we operate, because it's a bit different. And then we can jump back to sort of broader questions for the both of us. But I just want you to see some of the differences between our two programs. So we operate, again, like I said, in these 3 to 12-week project rounds. And you are going to apply for a specific project round with us to get one of our teams. So this is just for the 2021 year, as you can imagine, and there are some caveats at the end of this table that service dates can change because of coronavirus policies and safety measures. Because our teams are traveling in groups of 10 to 12 people, depending on if there are local guidelines for groups of people, we've had to and continue to have to adjust these dates a little bit. But as you can see, we have a project round coming up in April that goes until July of this year. And you can sort of see how early before that project round you would need to apply. So some of these dates have already passed. But for the concept form, it's about 3 to 4 months beforehand. For the application, it's about 2 to 3 months, and then you're given an award notification about a month before the team would arrive at your location. So some upcoming rounds that we have are mid-July to mid-September, and then mid-September to mid-December. And you can see the project dates. The application dates here. So if any of these service dates line up with an initiative that you have, like for example, if you had some sort of after school or summer program that was happening between July and September, please feel free to reach out to me after this and we can talk about what it would look like getting a team to you all. But I'm now going to back it up to our questions to see if, now that we've talked about the application process, if that sparks anything else for you all.
A couple quick questions that I have. Tell me a little bit about office space. As we start to think about, what kind of direct service we could potentially benefit from having additional people, there's a myriad of things that we could leverage, but finding office space for individuals may be prohibitive for us. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, for us, they would need a place to serve. We don't say work, but serve. We can say they overlap for this purpose. And however, I will also say that if they are doing activities with students, it's not like they need an office the whole time. It's wherever you would be doing those activities with students. And so they might just fit into what is already going on. And, but they do need like that physical space. If you were having them do a little capacity building for that program development, they would need, yes, a space to do that. They don't have some other home base necessarily from which to perform those activities. Right now, a lot of things are virtual. Some of our programs have gone on as is. We have some community gardening programs and stuff like that that haven't had to change really, but a lot of things are virtual. So as long as the students have if they have their own computer or something, as long as they have the materials to do that, they, if it's something that would for at least a while be virtual, then we're good. But they would need a place to conduct their service, whatever that makes sense for the activities. That's vague, partly because it varies so much.
Right. I'm thinking, obviously contact time with kids, we have space, but in interim space for lesson planning or all of that, that could be a little bit of a challenge for us. Not something we can't overcome, but that was the reason behind my question. And then the other is, and I should know the answer to this, but I don't. When you kind of alluded to partnering with CDE to think about some potential opportunities to support programming in the summer and beyond, do you know if, for example, I know in Adams 12, we work with AmeriCorps members to help implement our READ Act. And so, those individuals come into buildings, support kids. Do you know if that is a CDE level application or are individual districts applying for that?
I don't have an answer for that. I'm happy to pass on anything that we learn, or take in from CD on to you all through CAP. I'm not sure about that.
Yep, and I'm only asking that question because I wouldn't want to be in, competition with our own school district on that initiative. Obviously, I can do some detective work on my end, but I was just kind of.
So I'm not sure if, Brian, you're about to say this, but
I was just going to say, it sounds like Reading Corps.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Colorado Reading Corps, yeah.
Yep.
Which is another one of Danny's funded programs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And to get at the last bit with Stephanie, your point about space, that's one of those questions that I'm happy that you asked about and that you didn't just say it would be difficult and I don't know if we can do it and just leave it. That's the kind of thing we're happy to talk through about over time, about the requirements and what might be suitable and talk through the needs. We're happy to do that and not just say that you have to come to us with everything in place already. We are here to answer questions about that, and we could talk through a description of space or do a video call to see the space or something to see if it meets the needs of the program, if that makes sense. So yes, any kind of questions remotely like that, please know that we are happy to talk through things. And if something just is not allowable, we will tell you that if it's a compliance issue.
And then, Danny, I know that 21st Century will be releasing a new RFP this spring as well. So I'm looking at your timelines and then, would like some more information about your the year of planning, because I think that that's really an innovative approach where you can take your current RFP, thinking through where you could use some additional human capital and how to fold that into a current grant. So what's the timeline for those applications for the planning grants?
Sure. So one thing with us is we aren't able to set out things in as much of a structured way long-term like NCCC. And we post them to our website as soon as we have that information. One thing I'll say is generally it will open in mid to late February, and the process will go through April, maybe into early May. We do a round of peer reviews. Gesundheit. For all of our applications, including the planning grants, we welcome volunteer peer reviewers throughout the state. And our commissioners, some of them review them, and everyone on our team reviews them. And it's a back and forth process. Melinda can also speak to this right now about what it's like. So they apply, we get a concept paper if it's a full program, not if it's a planning grant. We review things, discuss them internally. We send back written clarification questions. You have time to respond to that. Then we have an interview, and the interview is more of a discussion. It's not all that intimidating, really. And it's to talk through some of the clarification questions that are still unclear. And it's also, if the clarification questions were answered adequately, it might be to just talk through some of that a little bit more. And then you get the final, submission into our system, and then it's awarded. So it takes a little bit still, even for the planning grant, a few months, but it's this back and forth. It doesn't have to be a perfect application right away. We have questions for everyone. There's never a group that comes through and doesn't have clarifying questions, and that is perfectly fine. And so you would expect that, and then the conversation, and then it would get started. So it gets started in late summer is probably when the funds would be available. And then you would be assigned a program officer and you would work on it for a year. Now, here's the thing with that. You don't have to complete that year of planning before you can apply for a full operational grant. To help with some of that, if you go through a planning grant, the things that I always tell people are the purpose is to find out whether your organization is able and willing to move forward with a full application. If you go through a planning grant year and you've done everything that you should have done with our guidance, and it looks like this isn't going to work for us, then that is okay. There is not an expectation of necessarily moving forward with applying for a full program, but it's a great time to develop what it would really look like. Who would our partners be if there are different sites that would have members? Identifying those sites, getting their buy-in so that when you apply for a full program, it's here's our idea, here are all the places they would go, everything they would do. And so it's tricky to come in and just be ready to apply for a full operational grant, which is why we offer the one-year planning grants. We don't want to set people up for failure with AmeriCorps. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and as soon as that information is publicly available, I'm happy to send that out to you all, and you can send it out through the network.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right. And sometimes it might be you would do what you're already doing, you just need more people to do it. So that's okay if you're not saying we're going to get rid of some people because it's too expensive, bring in AmeriCorps. Something else I want to say about AmeriCorps that we haven't gotten into that's really important, especially for people who work in the education space, is that it's not just about your organizations or your constituents. It's also about the members and their development. It is a developmental professional opportunity for people. You could have people who are fresh out of high school, fresh out of college, fresh out of career and retirement who want to do this now. You can recruit people who have certain interests, skills, degrees. There's all kinds of things that you can do for this. So don't think that it's just anybody coming in. You're recruiting, or as a group, if it's members going to different sites, you would kind of be recruiting together to find people who are a good fit for this, okay? And then there are developmental opportunities along the way. Members get their own training. They can have up to 20% of their time for training. And then when they leave, if they have successfully completed their term of service, then they get an education award. The Siegel Education Award is funded through the National Service Trust. And Brian can talk about this if you have any questions. He's, I think, 3-time AmeriCorps alum. And so members get this education award that can be used at any Title IV school. It can be used to repay public student loans. It can have a number of benefits, and I also do a training on that. So like with Melinda's group, as they're getting to the end of the term, we do a training with them on how to use it, go through the technical pieces and all of that. So there are benefits also for the members. It's not just about the organization or the people in the community. Okay, so you want to move on, Brian? See if there's anything else from mine. I'll leave this, my stuff at that if you have any questions about this cycle or any details like that.
Yeah, so this is just getting into our contact information so that you can contact us in the future for questions or wondering about future applications. So again, my name is Brian Wegner. I'm the Assistant Program Director. I cover a few states in our region. We work in a 9-state region at my office. And one of the states that I have is Colorado. If any of you happen to be connected to organizations that work in other states that are nearby, I may either be the person that you would want to contact, or I can put you in contact with the right person. But for now, I'll just give you my contact information. So again, I think this is recorded, so you'll have this in the future, but feel free to write it down as well. And we're an atypical grantor in the grantor space, and we really like to work with you and like develop these projects together. So please reach out to us with any questions that you may have.
And for mine, I've included also Paul Brown. He runs the grant application process. He puts out the requests for applications. He does a lot of that. So if you have any technical questions for anything you might see on our website through that link I shared earlier, including you can see the last round, you can see the materials that we've put out to get a sense of it, then if it's something technical about those materials, then please contact Paul. If you have any questions about wanting to connect with Melinda or other program representatives or anything, then please contact me. And thank you so much, Melinda, for offering that. A great way to learn more about it is to get away from us and talk with the people who lead these programs. I understand that. And so I'm happy to help with that in any way. And as Melinda and I have talked about, if you want to talk with members, we can maybe connect you with some members to see what they're doing, things like that. Whatever helps take it from the abstract to concrete opportunities for you, we're happy to facilitate that. All right.
Sweet. I'm going to hand it back over to Megan.
Thank you so much. And Kelsey's actually going to wrap it up for us.
Yep, I will be quick because we are quickly running out of time. So we just wanted to finish up with some of the upcoming events that CAP is offering. So every 2 weeks, we offer something that's called Coffee with CAP, and it's basically a webinar series where we tackle different topics within the after-school community. And there is actually one going on tomorrow at 10 o'clock, and it's reflecting on 2020 and building goals for 2021 as an after-school community. So we're really excited about that one. Hopefully we will see some of you guys there tomorrow. And then the next one that we're offering is at 12 o'clock, and it is implicit bias modules, and that's on January 26th. And then the best way, if you're wondering to, how to get involved more with CAP, it's join our newsletter. We offer a lot of really great resources through our newsletter. That's how we communicate with most of the community, as well as social media. We're pretty active on those, shooting out resources and such. And then, of course, our website, which is coloradoafterschoolpartnership.org. So I think that wraps it up for everybody.
Again, thank you,
Thanks
Brian,
so much.
Melinda, and Danny. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you all. We'll be around for any questions. Have a great day.